Get straight into this, Joe. Rory McIlroy. Good morning, by the way, Joe. Talking about changing diapers and getting his hands dirty. Like, this is an interesting prospect. I was thinking about it before yesterday, that a man who has openly admitted that he reads so many self-help books, he thinks so much about psychology, he thinks about the mind so much. A newborn child can't not have a seismic impact on how this guy views the sport that he plays.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It seems to be a phenomenon generally in sport, doesn't it? That new fathers seem to do very well. The nappy factor,
the
Bryson
diaper factor,
DeChambeau,
Joe.
the diaper factor, of course. Excuse me. Bryson DeChambeau apparently a couple of weeks ago had run the numbers on this. I kid you not. This is like the mad scientist, Bryson DeChambeau. So he had run the numbers.
He was thinking about a career move, was he?
I mean, I would not put it past him. He'll have a new one every week if it can get him over the line. So he'd run the numbers, and you are. I mean, your chances go up massively. Yeah, Danny Willett famously won the Masters right after he became a father for the first time. I mean, how can you not feel good about life? How can you not kind of approach the event as serious as it is with a kind of sense of, well, it's not the most important thing, and therefore maybe you're that touch more relaxed, and you know, it's a very special time. It's a lovely thing. So it certainly can't hurt now that everything has gone well and that, you know, mother and child are healthy. Interestingly, I mean, if you're looking at the top 4 or 5, we have McIlroy there, brand new father, and we have Thomas Pieters, who went off the radar. He's a brand new father as well. He shot 4 under yesterday. He's tied for second. So I don't know, Owen. Might be something to think about.
Wow, you know, that is clearly the first step to success. Just pop a baby out. That is incredible. What underpinned Rory's excellent performance yesterday?
That's a good question. I mean, he's just been so erratic post-lockdown. Like, he'll play brilliant holes and then throw in crazy holes. So I suppose the obvious initial answer would be he's not making as many mistakes, far fewer mistakes. He drove the ball incredibly well. I mean, just incredibly well. And that had been missing a little bit of late. So right from the off, that's a huge advantage, his biggest advantage back. And that set him up for a lot of good chances. The course, which we should talk about because it was kind of disappointing, I think, in how it all transpired yesterday. But the course meant that when he was driving the ball so well, he had lots of 9 irons and wedges and, you know, 8 irons at a push into greens. And so, you give yourself a lot of chances. He put it pretty well. You know, he held a couple of big ones. A lot of players did, actually. The greens seemed to be rolling quite well. And there, one example maybe of what's still lurking there a little bit, but only lurking there a little bit, is his 10th hole. And at this stage, he was 3 under, you know, beautiful front nine. So he effectively drove the green, which very few players even attempted to do. Most players laid back and hit a short wedge on. But McIlroy drove the green, you know, so he's got an eagle putt suddenly from 30, 35 feet. And he 3-putted, you know, and it was a real moment where he looked to the sky and you think, God, a 2-putt for a birdie around here when I've hit that drive is criminal, really. And I think he might have followed up that hole then with poor enough effort in the next. You know, it affected him because he knew it was such a good chance. And that's always kind of lurking there with him a little bit, you know. And there was one other hole worth mentioning as well. This was all around the same time. This was in the same 2 or 3 hole stretch. If we're kind of talking about the dangers there, where, again, beautiful drive, and he's got a wedge in his hand, and he pulls the wedge terribly, you know, and doesn't give himself a chance, and he 3-putts from there, and it's a really bad bogey. And Paul McGinley made an interesting observation on McIlroy because his wedges have been talked about as much as his putting. And McGinley said that when McIlroy has a yardage, which is a full wedge where he can just go at it, he's very, very good, and he'll hit lots of good wedges in those circumstances. However, if he's between numbers, as they say, and he has to maybe, you know, hit a 3/4 shot with this wedge as the yardage requires, McGinley said he struggles to take speed off. You know, that's one of the great skills that someone like Dustin Johnson has improved massively over the last few years. He's able to, you know, with the use of TrackMan on the practice ground, he can adjust his swing, and if he needs a 68-yard shot or a 78-yard shot, he can adjust. And maybe that's something McIlroy of late, because he had improved this in the last couple of years, but of late has struggled with. So I'm talking about the dangers or the concerns which are sort of lurking. But really, I mean, you would have to say in general, he drove the ball brilliantly. A lot of his irons were very, very good. I thought he putted well, absolutely. And the key point with McIlroy is he has only ever won majors when after the first day he's either been leader or one shot off the lead. McIlroy needs, I think, to see himself in the leaderboard. You can see it in his body language. I mean, if you just turn on the TV and you see McIlroy before you see his score, you'll have a decent bet as to how he's doing. It's just, Jack Nicklaus told him years ago he needed to actually camouflage his feelings a bit more because it was just so obvious, but that's not in his makeup. So I think McIlroy feeds off pressure, being on the leaderboard in the tournament. And so being 2 shots back, that is brilliant because particularly of late, you think of Portrush and several other majors of late, he's been out of the tournament after the first round. So, from our perspective and hoping for a really exciting weekend, the fact that he's on that leaderboard, he's feeling good, it's really, really promising. Now, not without a few dangers given his recent form, as I've just kind of discussed, but he would have bitten your hand off for 3 under par, 2 shots off the lead on day one. So that's really good.
Yeah, and it's Justin Thomas up in front, 5 under par, 1 clear of a group of 3. Patrick Reed, Thomas Peters, and Matthew Wolff. I was watching some of the coverage last night, Joe, and listened to Paul McGinley. The lowest score, Justin Thomas's score yesterday, was the lowest score at a US Open at winged foot, and there's been a lot of conversation about the lowness of the scores after day one. But like you look at last year, 13 under par, it was 16 under par in 2017, but it's very rare to hit those lows. Like Rory at Congressional, worth a mention as well, obviously in that way. But McGinley, very strong in it last night. Doesn't want to see, in his own words last night, another generic PGA setup. Isn't the US Open supposed to be tougher than this?
Yeah. Yesterday was such a disappointment. So the US, like to give it a very brief version of this, like US Open is meant to be the toughest test in golf. That's the marketing slogan, and for a long time it was the saying went, it was single file fairways and incredibly fast greens and thick rough. That's kind of the MO. That's what you're signing up for. And somewhere along the way, the USGA who set up this event, they've lost their way and they've done some mad stuff. We've had crazy low scoring at times. They've taken the tournament to all sorts of quirky places. Chambers Bay a couple of years ago, nobody seemed to like. I kind of enjoyed the madness of it, but it didn't seem to go down terribly well. So I think it's lost its identity a touch. And 4 of the last 5 US Open winners have been under par. And it's sort of a thing with the US Open, like, can you beat par to win, and 4 of the last 5 have been under par. And as you said, like a generic PGA Tour event is what this thing can become if it's not careful. So there was a real sense that we're back at winged foot, where Jeff Ogilvy won in 2006 and he was 5 over. Hale Irwin won there in 1974. The Massacre at Wingfoot, it was called, in 1974. He won with 7 over. Bobby Jones won here in 1929 with 6 over. So there was a sense we're back here where just 14 years ago, Jeff Ogilvy won with 6 over. And we thought, okay, we've had, 4 of the last 5 years, US Open have been under par. We're going to really see some fun and games here, which is, it's fun to watch them struggle a little bit. And all during the week, all the players were saying, they were being asked, will an under par score be the winner here? And they all said no. They didn't think so. So what seems to have happened sometime across Wednesday is they cut the rough down a little bit. I mean, not dramatically, from 5 inches down to 4 inches, but it's not nothing. And the rough is still very thick. Don't get me wrong, very thick. But they did that. The pin positions, I don't know if you would have seen, even if you're watching for 20 minutes yesterday, so many of those pins were in the middle of the green.
Very favourable.
Not very favourable. Technology has played a factor here. You might have heard Paul McGinley was making the point. He could remember 06 and guys where they were once hitting 5 irons into certain greens are now hitting 9 irons. That's a different world. In terms of being able to stop the ball, that is just a different stratosphere. So technology, that is a part of this story, and that's what happens when you go back to courses after a long period of time. And then the greens were soft, inexplicably. I was just like, yesterday was disappointing in that respect. The greens were soft, so they're hitting.
How much of that, Joe? How much of that can they change? Is the point, right? Like, so you talk about the setup or the single file fairways. So they can shake it up today if they want.
They have a sub-air system under the greens. The better courses do. They have total control over those greens. And really, like, the way to counteract technology is not distance. It's not like, let's add an extra 1,000 yards onto this course. It's the greens. And we've seen that in the last couple of weeks. The tougher courses have had, rock hard, rock fast greens. And these, I mean, you even with the softness of them yesterday, you'd have seen they're very sloped. Like, you can imagine if these greens get really fast, a ball's kind of, it's starting to roll and it's still rolling and it's rolled off the green. You can have all that kind of carnage. Who knows why they didn't yesterday? I mean, the two best kind of conspiracy theories, if you want, are one, that they were concerned about pace of play. And obviously, maybe in the weekend that they've less daylight than they might have. I don't know. But, pace of play is a factor, 3 balls. So let's just, keep things moving at a reasonable pace. The course is tough enough. And come the weekend, they'll unleash hell. I don't know. I think, the USGA have been criticised so much over the last couple of years because they've kind of made a mess of different tournaments. And I just think they played it a touch safe yesterday. But, like, the net result was, you have 32 players, even par or better. You have 21 under par after the first day. Like, McIlroy made the argument, if you shot even par, you were kind of around the top 10. So it's not like it's a total kind of PGA Tour event where it's not difficult at all. It was still very tough and made people look foolish. But I think the masochists in us, when we tune into the US Open, like, we want it to be brutal. We want the players like having strops and mentally breaking down, and So Justin Thomas with his wedge in his hand or his 9-iron in his hand, knocking balls into the middle of the greens. I found it a touch boring at times yesterday. Not to, like, Shane Lowry shot 6 over, Phil Mickelson shot 8 over. If you weren't playing well, it still got you. Of course, it is still a US Open, but I just wanted them to kind of just turn the dial a bit more. I'd be curious as to know why they did what they did yesterday, but yesterday was not a memorable day. Put it that way. That's the best way of putting it up. I've already forgotten it. It was quite boring a lot of the time.
Yeah, there can't be 3 more 65s is the point, and they got to dial it up. They got to give us casual golf fans what we've come to see, Joe. So Justin Thomas up front. I know Peter Lowry made a big play for Patrick Reed. For no great reason other than, I think, a bit of instinct in Golf Weekly during the week. So it's stacked. Like Thomas Peters, you mentioned McIlroy, Lee Westwood suddenly in the mix. I think a lot of people will be keeping an eye out for him. But even though we don't know what shape the course is going to look today, you mentioned that the state of the greens or the pin positions. What's your instinct, having seen day one now, as to who's going to end up on top here come Sunday?
Well, the thing is, it's completely stacked, isn't it? Like, how many players are in the top 20? So the gap is nothing. The gap is a Justin Thomas double or triple bogey away from the guy who's in 15th. So, I mean, that's one of the downsides yesterday as well of not having a tougher test. I think it's a bunch leaderboard. So, I mean, it's all to play for. Thomas looks exceptionally good, and he is exceptionally good, and he's a world number 1 over the last while. He doesn't have a weakness, Justin Thomas. He is just phenomenal. Peter Lowry picked Patrick Reed, I am convinced, because a caddy friend of his told him Patrick Reed was looking good. That's how, So Peter Lowry will make these picks and go, I think this week Patrick Reed, with no real reason, as we told him at the time. So obviously I suspect Peter, has good intel, and the word was that Reed was hitting the ball well. So you would expect Thomas to hang around. You would expect Reed to hang around if we're going via the leaderboard. Peters, I'm not so sure, just because of his form of late. I think, diaper effect and everything, I'm not so sure. Matthew Wolff is interesting, Adrian. He's like, wonder kid, hits the ball a gazillion miles, quirky swing. He was thereabouts at Harding Park, San Francisco, in the last major last month. So I'd expect Wolff to hang around. McIlroy, we're hoping hangs around. Like, he should, really. He was in such good form pre-lockdown, and whatever distraction he had with the pregnancy and these strange times, you would hope his mind's a bit more at peace now. And like I said, he's on the leaderboard. So McIlroy hopefully to hang around. Westwood, who knows? I mean, you'd be crazy to tip Lee Westwood to win. I think this is his 82nd major without a win, which is a record. Westhazen, really good player. He could hang around. Kokrak, Todd, on it goes. I'm not so sure. Sanders Shoffley at 2 under.
In a word, you're going for.
In a word, I am going for
Patrick Reed. Joe, go on. You want to.
Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed had a hole-in-one yesterday, and people barely celebrated with it. That's his level of popularity. God love him. Do you know what? For the hell of it, Adrian, I'm looking at Rory and I'm just thinking the nappy factor. We could have wrapped this up with the first question.
He's got his hands dirty, Joe.
Oh my word, Bryson DeChambeau going off to have a baby just for the possibility of winning the major has got to be the highlight of this piece. Joe, good man.
That's nice. You did
it. Enjoy the weekend.
All right, see you.
Good stuff. Take it easy. You can check out Golf Weekly, by the way. All of that good stuff there with Joe, Peter, Nathan, Fionn, and Ronan Flood is their very special guest this week. He was really good stuff there from the caddy of Patrick Carrington. So that